Welcome back, everyone. So today is a very exciting episode. This is my 100th episode, and I have a special guest here with me today. And what better way to celebrate my 100th episode than to talk about food? I have Michelle Earthhawk K with me here today. And Michelle is a fruitarian, and we're going to dive into the benefits of intuitive eating and how we've gotten to where we are and how, these subconscious programs around food play out in our lives. And, throughout this awakening process and this journey, what food looks like, as we're moving through this healing path. So welcome, Michelle. I'm so glad to have you on the show today.
Thank you so much for having me. So honored to be here, and congratulations on your 100th show. That's a huge accomplishment.
It really is. Thank you. So let's dive into your story a little bit. So I met you, well, actually I had met you online first, but you live very close to me. And I didn't meet you in person until we spoke at a similar event up in North Washington. And I had actually heard your story from a friend of mine who's also a friend of yours. And I thought, oh my goodness, I had no idea that she has been on this path. And so let's start off with your story first and how you've gotten to where you are today.
Wonderful. Thank you, Tanya. You gotta love common connections. It started probably the year before 2015. The idea of becoming vegan or removing plant-based products out of my diet started coming into my forefront. And I had started my spiritual journey, but I wasn't into it really, deep and heavy yet. And so New Year's Eve, beginning of 2015, I decided to start taking baby steps. And so every time I ran out of a product, I would replace it with a vegan alternative. And my biggest concern with going with vegan was I was a cheeseaholic. I loved cheese so much. And then I saw the cost of vegan cheese, and it's like, oh my gosh, there's no way I could afford to eat that.
And does it taste the same?
It doesn't. And the thing I quickly learned was, I was about 6 months into my journey before I even purchased any vegan cheese. And I quickly learned that a very tiny amount goes a long way. So it actually lasts a long time, because too much of it is gross. And too much of it actually sticks to the roof of your mouth, and it's just, yeah. So just a little goes a long way. And so I had done that diet, but of course, since I was replacing products, I was eating a lot of processed vegan food. And 2.5 years into the process, I got extremely ill off of the Xanthan Gum, which is a preservative you find in just about everything, especially vegan foods.
Yeah, I've heard of that.
A thickener and a preservative. And of course, one of the things I had to do was become an avid label reader. And it blows my mind how many products they sneak dairy into, because casein is the addictive property of dairy. It is designed to encourage calves to nurse. But on the human body, casein works the same as sugar and heroin on the brain pleasure centers.
Interesting.
So there's a reason why we crave cheese and ice cream and cream in our coffee, because it's got that casein in it.
Not only that, Michelle, we were born to drink formula and to do these things, since the day many of us, if you couldn't be nursed by your mom, so that dairy program has been running since the time we were young.
Well, and the whole concept, we are the only species that continue, the only species that drinks milk from
an animal source.
For another animal, and we're the only species that continues to drink milk through our lifetime. And it is what you said. It is a program. It is a fallacy. It is something brought to us by the dairy industry to keep the money flowing.
Yeah. Not only that, it creates mucus in the body. It harbors viruses and bacteria. So there's a lot of studies out there about the harmful effects of dairy as well.
And when I really started getting into it and following it, if you follow the American Heart Association diet, the American Diabetes Association diet, and the National Cancer Institute. All of those diets actually are designed, if you really look at it, to increase the disease, because it increases the mucus, and it's just a cycle of, oh, we're eating this diet, it's supposed to help this disease. Oh, but what, it's making the disease worse, and whole nother podcast.
Absolutely.
So I was guided, my guides guided me to fast for 3 days. And I think it's ended up, my 52nd birthday was the last day of my 3-day fast. They planned this big party, but then I was guided to go raw from that point on. And I think the main driving factor behind going raw is to remove all the processed foods out of my diet.
Gotcha.
And I had never been a person who added salt to their food. I found food naturally salty, but it wasn't until I removed all the processed food out of my diet that, oh my gosh, the salt cravings came around. But it was because there was so much salt in the processed part of the food. And when you eliminate sugar and salt, your taste buds start to change and go back to their natural state. And you will find, you will taste the natural sweetness and saltiness in foods. So now if I'm craving salt, I can add celery or add more tomatoes. They have the sodium that has that craving. So somewhere after going raw vegan, it just kind of naturally fell into the raw fruitarian because I was eating more fruit. The nice thing about raw fruitarians, we do a lot of what we call mono-mealing. So we only eat one ingredient. Like this morning, I had alfalfa mangoes. And your stomach and digestive system really likes that, because it's like, oh, cool, one food, we know what to do. We add this enzyme, this chemical, we mash it this way, and we process it. The problem when we eat multiple ingredient foods is then your stomach has to put in multiple enzymes and multiple chemicals to digest what we've put into our diets. When you're eating only one food, it doesn't have an issue. And the other thing is, most people don't realize our digestive systems are like any other muscle. You have to work it out. And when I first began the raw fruitarian, I'm thinking, how on earth am I going to get anywhere from 18 to 2,000 calories into my diet? That's a lot of food.
That is a lot of fruit.
And because fruit is so low calorie, it takes a lot of fruit to make that many calories. But it's like any muscle. And so when I first started, 3 bananas was more than enough for a meal. And gradually I could sit down and eat 6 to 8 bananas as a meal. 2 apples, and now I can do anywhere from 4 to 6, depending on the size of the apples. I cut up 9 mangoes, but wasn't quite as hungry, so I probably ate 6 mangoes this morning.
That's a lot of work to cut up 9 mangoes.
It does take a lot of work. Well, and then for a while, I thought I was being guided to continue and push on, because after raw fruitarian, then there's liquidarian, and then there's breatharian.
Gotcha.
And in truth, food in itself as energy has been another programmed myth that we've been led to believe, that we have to consume our energy. And I look at these yogis. I happen to have a friend, I think he's going on his 22nd year of breatharian. He was just at a pranic lifestyle conference. The main speaker has been breatharian for 50 years.
Wow.
And they just laid a yogi to rest that had been breatharian for 75 years.
Wow. That's fascinating.
Imagine what you would do if you didn't have to buy groceries, you didn't have to cook, and you didn't have to clean.
Or eat.
What would you do with that energy and that money? It's like, it's such a freeing concept. Of course, I have been shown recently that the reason it's so heavy on my heart is because I've already been there. That was in a past life. So I don't necessarily have to go to that extent this time, but the whole idea of being so freed up, whether you travel or you're hiking, or to not have to consume your energy, to only ground tap in and get it from the sun, and get it from Gaia, get it from the wind, the plants.
Yeah, there's a good documentary I just watched called Eat the Sun, and it was on Gaia, and it's about sun gazing. And I've been practicing sun gazing. It's kind of hard here in North Idaho to do it all year. But when I lived in Florida, I was doing it regularly. It's where you can look at the sun the very first 15 minutes it comes up in the morning, and then the very last 15 minutes it goes down. And the documentary is very interesting because it does show a shift in the amount of food that you just don't want to eat because you're getting the nutrients and the minerals from the sun. And I will say, when I've been intermittent fasting this entire month, and I've been going, I started out with 12 hours and then 16 and then 18. Now I'm up to almost 28 hours without, eating. And so I will say, when you start to incorporate these shifts in the way that we perceive food, or if we're eating it for comfort or filling the emotional void, we will begin to recognize that. I know for me, I've been fasting and I've had emotions coming up. It's like I'm bubbling to the surface. And so not only am I healing my physical body, but I'm also healing my mental and emotional and spiritual body as well. So I can completely see, some people may watch this and be like, breatharian, that's nuts, but I can see where, as you slowly begin to pull things out of your diet and shift it, you're getting the vital minerals and nutrients that your body needs, and you don't need as much food, right?
Exactly. Well, and that also leads to sunglasses.
Yes. Yes.
We gain so much healing from the sun. And so the idea of, oh no, we have to shield our eyes from this poisonous sun that's going to injure, But again, like you said, the sun gazing, I started sun gazing, I would walk to the bus route wherever I was going, and I would just sun gaze. And I got to the point where I could pretty much sun gaze anytime during the day.
Uh-huh.
One thing I have noticed, the sun is also shifting. So there are days
It's bright.
It is so bright, you just can't look at it. It's like, okay. And other days, you have no problem sun gazing any time of the day. But especially, if you're going to start out, you want to sun gaze at early dawn or late dusk when the sun is at its weakest point.
And start off with like 10 seconds and then 20 seconds, like start off very small amounts. Don't just sit there and stare at the sun for 2 straight minutes. It's watch that documentary. If any of you have Gaia, Eat the Sun. It's actually, there was one guy on there who they caught him at the restaurant eating or whatnot. But the reality is I think eating for us as a society, it's a way of connecting, bringing people together. It's a way of comfort. And I want to talk about that too, Michelle. As we're moving through your story, what were some challenges that you had or that you're still having with continuing this lifestyle of healthy eating?
Well, the longer I've been plant-based diet, grains have become an issue, especially wheat and gluten, and rice and corn, not so much. Tender corn, but gluten, yes, definitely can't do gluten. And so one of the huge challenges is, people going out to eat and with friends, finding a place that's vegan and gluten-free. The combination of those two is a very difficult lifestyle to follow. A lot of times I will bring my own stuff. I house sit a lot, they're always, well, make yourself at home, eat what you want, but I always have to bring my entire kitchen with me because my diet is so different. When I first started going raw, I would notice, and the other thing, transition that happened, once I went raw, the weight fell off. All my life I had struggled with my weight. My mom struggled with her weight. It goes way back to my grandmother, who used to cut all the labels out of her clothing. So when my mom finally had to start taking care of her, she didn't know how to buy clothes for my grandmother because all of the labels were cut out. It's like, wow, now I understand how much the body dysphoria has followed generation after generation after generation. And my mom was dieting all the time. And I was kind of a chunky kid growing up, and so weight was always an issue. But man, going raw, and I've read enough that I've found that most of us have a set point that our body wants to be at. And if we get out of our way, our bodies will naturally settle into that set point. And so all the weight went off. And as I'm tracking the weight and keeping track of it, I noticed all of a sudden I'd wake up one morning and I'd put on 5 pounds overnight. And oh, that's kind of odd. Well, then a little later in the day, the cravings for cooked food would show up. Well, then later in the day, then I would find out we had a coronal mass injection. And so what I was discovering was part of what I'm doing is buffering these energies that are coming in. So I would need the heavier weight, but it was so odd that I would put the weight on first.
Yeah, like you're preparing.
And it was the cycle that followed these massive coronal mass injections. And of course, at first it was, once every 6 months, and then once every 3 months, and then every month. Well, now it's almost every week too.
Yeah, they're hammering us right now, especially since this Lionsgate. Yeah.
Oh, the Lionsgate, yeah. And then it came to a point where it's like, okay, I no longer need it, because I'm thinking, how am I supposed to, Spirit wants me to intuitively follow this raw fruit diet. And yet the energies are asking for heavier food.
To ground.
So I got to the point where it's like, I can't do both. But lately what I've discovered is now it's more of my inner child, my wounded child wanting the comfort of the cooked food. Versus, and my spirit still wants the higher food. And it's like, I want the comfort. And it's comfort here. But the minute it gets into my stomach and my digestive system, there's no more comfort involved. But then, of course, you're learning also to be compassionate. Okay, yes, I comforted my wounded child with these wonderful vegan nachos. But now it's like, okay, now I don't feel very good. I'm feeling bloated. I'm all puffed up. Now I need to be compassionate towards myself that I chose the vegan nachos instead of the watermelon, and comforted my wounded child, and not beat myself up for it, because it's not a straight line. It's not a solid line. If you're following intuitive eating, your soul might have you go to raw, to intermittent fasting, back to vegetarian, back to vegan, back to raw. So if you're really listening, you have to have a great amount of compassion for these changes and be willing to go along with it. And for me, that in itself is bringing up a lot of issues to be healed and triggers. And
absolutely. And I recognized the other day I had to go to Walmart because I had to go get kitty litter and some things that I can't always get at the other store. So I've been intermittent fasting for about a month now. And then I get into Walmart and I'm recognizing my little inner voice is like, oh, look, there's peanut M&Ms, and oh, look, there's this, and oh, look, there's that. And I immediately was like, oh, no, because it was like this, you've got this little, the old Disney movies with the devil and the angel on one side, but it's like I had this little voice inside of me saying, hey, don't you want some sweets? Don't you want this? And they have it marketed the moment you walk in the door, so it was like I was being tested in how firm are you in this fasting, process, and can you handle walking into literally the lion's den Walmart, right? That's everything there that would tempt you or make you want to crave things. And I noticed I had the thoughts coming up, but my body wasn't like, oh yeah, put that in the cart. It was more like me fighting the thought saying, no, we're not there anymore. This is not, the program that I want to run anymore. So it was really funny. It was like a test for me to see. And I wasn't even expecting it because I thought I would just walk in, purchase a few things and walk out. But it was really funny because I just could sense my body kind of saying no, but my mind was what was saying, oh yeah, what about that? Or, oh yeah, what about that? So I do think, our body knows what to do, but it's getting our mind to overcome the thoughts around that's a comfort food, or that made you feel good when you were hurting or you were sad. And, so I do feel like it's like it's like a holistic process of getting the body on board, but also getting the mind and the emotions on board as well. Have you experienced that before?
That is beautiful. And I have to kudos to you, because sometimes I find that's happening But then there's a part of me that's standing back and watches my hand grab it and put it in the cart anyway.
Like autopilot almost.
Like, now, wait a minute. Or it's like, oh, very much so. There, very much so. It's like there's a part that's sitting back here observing the autopilot. And it's like, now, wait a minute. But I haven't, there are times when I can't quite intercept it.
Uh-huh. It's like a neural pathway that needs to be reset.
And I'm like, why can't I? You know, and there's, okay, I'm thinking I'm trying to stop it, but it's like there's a connection that's missing. And it's like, okay, I just watch, okay. And so, yeah.
Yeah, that's tough. And so I think too, Michelle, we had talked about before we started recording is that there's a lot of judgment or beating ourselves up. If we are like, okay, I'm going to start to eat vegan a little bit, or I'm going to go on a raw food diet, or I'm going to fast. And then maybe you slip out of that for a little bit and you eat some meat, or you add some sugar, or you do these things. And then we're our own critic, our own hardest critic, right? So we beat ourselves up, but then there is a lot of that, projection from the external world as well that, oh, you're supposedly a vegan and now I saw you eating a hamburger, or whatever. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about the ascension process and, how we are being guided to eat and, not beating ourselves up about, what we're putting in our mouth.
Right. Well, and when I began this journey, I did see being plant-based, as a positive thing, especially for the animals. And as I have been longer on this journey, I came to realize that obviously, if everyone took off their meat suit, you would see our souls are all different species. And so each species is going to have a different nutritional need. Mm-hmm. And so, on the surface, we all look human, but we've got Lyrian and Octurian and Palladian and Venusian, and every species of soul requires different nutritional needs, different energetic needs. And so I quickly discovered that whereas this type of diet might be good for me, the person I'm house sitting for, who's on the primal diet, that might be what they need for their highest vibrational path. It's not a cookie cutter. It's not one size fits all. And same with, meditation or energy work. There's so much of it. It's not a one size fits all. And I also discovered that, well, in the beginning, the animals did agree to come and help be nourishment for us. That time has come to change. Every being gets to choose their new life path with this new evolution. And I wish, and in fact, I just watched a documentary the other day, a raw vegan, but apparently she was scamming her investors and everything, and they caught her in a hotel with pizza box. They caught her because she ordered a pizza,
Yeah.
And there's so much judgment, whether it's diet for ourselves or diet for health, and then we've got the medical field, and physicians get not even a quarter of nutrition. And the whole idea of you are what you eat, and let thy food be thy medicine. It's like we need to go back to those old principles, because the food is the medicine. But I've met so many people that they would rather take a pill than eliminate bacon from their diet.
Absolutely. And I'm a firm believer that most of us are full of parasites. And I think that those parasites are what are driving us to want to crave these foods and eat these foods. So I think when you start on this journey or this path, it's very individualized for each one of us. And mine started out with detoxing, and then moving into parasite cleansing, heavy metals, and then adding minerals and nutrients into my body. And so, but once I did those parasite cleanses, I noticed a significant shift in what I wasn't craving anymore. So I do feel, we are, at a point where we have to look a little bit deeper than what, conventional medicine has taught us to do.
Correct. Well, I'm glad you mentioned the parasite thing. Something thing that it's a time for another one. And I did that. I did the diatomaceous earth.
Uh-huh.
I think I did a tablespoon in 8 ounces of glasses of water every day. So yeah, I went through that also. Um, it is, if people really started, really wanted to get into it and fascinating, and there's so many documentaries about health and what our food farming practices are doing to the earth, and what our food farming practices are doing to each other. Another good one is Seaspiracy on Netflix,
Mhm.
and that deals with the fishing and the plastic. And of course, the number one contributor to plastic in the ocean is fishing.
Absolutely. And the root cause
And
is a good one too. It talks about root canals and how they affect our
yep.
body. That's a fantastic documentary.
Yeah.
It is. And I think, I worked in a Seventh-day Adventist hospital for about 15 or so years, and they are very anti eating pork and, stuff. So they would show us videos, of the inhumane things that they were doing to the pigs. And I immediately was like, I think for me, visually seeing what they're doing to what I was eating was very difficult for me. Now, I grew up in a family where we hunted. We lived out in the country and we did hunt. But we ate what we hunted, and it provided us, our food. And so, but we were doing it in a humane way. And I do think that, once you start to do a little research on what is happening in the meat industry, then it may open your eyes to these things. And if for me, I could not stomach eating pork again after I watched those videos. Now, I don't eat a ton of meat. I literally notice myself eating meat around the full moon and around my cycle. But then I started to recognize that's when the parasites come out. So parasites are much more active around full moon cycles. So you want to start cleansing roughly 2 or 3 days prior to the full moon, through the full moon, and then 2 or 3 days after. So roughly a week. And once I started doing that, I recognized I wasn't craving the meat. I wasn't craving the dairy. I wasn't craving the sugars.
Wow.
And that started to help me as well as implementing more minerals into my diet. So magnesium, zinc, potassium. I started taking chromium, certain things that would balance out my blood sugar as well as provide me with nutrients. And that's when I recognized my fasting could go much longer. And when I was going to eat, I wasn't eating the things that I didn't, that I used to eat and didn't want to eat. So I do think sometimes it is mind over matter. If my sister and I both watched those videos about the pigs, and we were like, not anymore. And so every time someone tries to give me bacon or give me pork related products, I immediately have a flashback to those videos. So I do think that's a program running in my mind right now, which I'm okay with because it's keeping me from eating pork.
That's a good one. Yeah,
Programs can always be bad.
Yeah, I think another one that deals with the pork is What the Health.
Yes.
And then there are so many out there now that talk about it. And
but I think too, I think often when we have these large energy shifts, we are being pushed to ground, and so the first thing we think of is meat, but there's so many vegetables we can eat that are grounding, like potatoes or eggplant or sweet potatoes, or, there's other things that we can eat.
chocolate.
To ground us, to make us feel more anchored in and balanced, or just going for a swim or going for a walk, getting out in nature. Those are things, because when we're feeling those intense energy shifts, it's like there's times I'm like floating around. I'm like, whoa, I've got to eat something to bring me back down. But really what we can do is meditate and just sit in it and anchor ourselves in and ground. So we don't have to use the food, to ground us. But of course, naturally, that's what we're accustomed to doing, because that's what we've been programmed, to do since the day we were born.
Better yet, take off your shoes, go outside, stick your toes in the dirt, stick your hands in the dirt. There have been times when I've carried a vial of dirt. There have been times when couldn't get back in my body and people are stuffing dirt in my pockets. And I had a friend, they couldn't get her grounded. They put her in the bathtub and literally was dumping potting soil on her and got her pretty much buried in the bathtub.
Yeah, sometimes it's like, and I think you're a gardener, you do a lot of gardening and being outdoors. And, I notice the days like I'll go out to Green Bluff and pick a bunch of fruit or whatever. And I feel so grounded because I'm touching the fruit, I'm touching the trees, and I'm out in nature. And that makes a huge difference in how we feel. And it also can help with our eating habits. And I actually had a client, she was really struggling with some sugar cravings and she just couldn't get over them. She couldn't figure out why. Well, we went all the way back to her early childhood and found out that she would eat when she would get anxious or stressed. And we found out that it all started at age 4 when she went to the dentist. The first time she was stressed and scared, and they handed her a sucker. And so she associated the sugar of the sucker with being anxious and uncomfortable. So we went back and cleared that, old energetic program. And then the next day she was like, I haven't had sugar craving at all today. And then a week went by and she's like, I'm not craving sugar at all. So it was successful in us removing that program, but it went all the way back to age 3 or 4. And you never think that something like that would create a program, that deep in the subconscious, but that's what happens.
Right. Well, and how many times do you leave the dentist with a sucker?
Exactly. Which is like,
yeah.
Why would they give you a sucker at the dentist? Oh, to come back to the dentist.
They're thinking about it. Yeah. Well, the other thing that people, it's like, where do you get your protein? Well, your body does not create protein from protein. Your body creates protein from amino acids. So when you eat animal protein, your body has to break it all down and separate all the enzymes out. If you're just eating the enzymes, you cut out the middleman and you're all that less digestion. And the other beautiful thing about fruit is there is nothing slow about fruit digesting. There is nothing in my digestive system that's going to sit there and rot and ferment and cause gas and bloating. And when a fruitarian is at optimal, I can have my breakfast eaten, processed, digest, and eliminated before my next meal. There is nothing in my system sitting there. It's straight in, straight out. That way I'm getting the nutrients, I'm using the nutrients. It works faster, it works functioning, and I'm actually quite amazed at how fast
it comes out.
You consume something and it's already processed through your body. It's like, wow.
That's awesome. And not only that, Michelle, it's like I recognize when I'm eating primarily raw fruits and veggies, I feel so much lighter. And it's because they hold light. They are of a high frequency, a high vibration. And when we eat that energy, that light, it raises our vibration. And I've actually even gotten to the point where I hold my hand over my food and I bless it and I raise its personal vibration and I reset it back to its original DNA structure to source energy. And I do that regularly and I recognize that I feel better afterwards. And there's a reason why we were taught to pray before we eat. And we don't all understand the reason why, but a lot of it has to do with raising the energetic vibration of the food and ourselves and holding that frequency. So because it's all energy, everything is energy, frequency, and vibration. And that includes our food. And so when we can take, I've even done it where it's like, oh, I can't get an organic peach. So I will hold an intention over the peach and raise its vibration and reset it back to its original DNA structure, which is even better than organic because that means it's back to its original structure. And then I can eat that peach, So I think we all get so caught up with, I've got to eat organic or I have to do this. But the reality is we have the power to transmute that energy. We have the power to shift it because it's all energy, and that, sometimes that takes some more advanced concept sometimes to get to the point that we do understand that everything is energy, frequency, and vibration. And that kind of helped me to not beat myself up so much if I couldn't get organic, all the time. Because, it's pretty easy here in North Idaho, North Washington, Eastern Washington. But when I was in New York visiting my family, I was really struggling, with it. And so I said, okay, I'm being guided intuitively to raise the frequency of this food before I ingest it. And then I recognized that I was feeling better and it wasn't affecting me, in a way. So it's like setting an intention is a very powerful superpower, kind of that we have. And we can, do that through our own intuition.
And I'm so glad we have that superpower, because for being, I've been on full disability since 1998, and Medicare does not allow me to afford organic fruits and vegetables. And so I changed the vibrational structure of my food through energy work. And I'm not sure if you're familiar with Todd Medina. He was homeless and on the streets for many, many years. And the only thing he could afford to eat was off of the McDonald's dollar menu.
Uh-huh. Oh, you hit me.
The 2 years that he was done being homeless on the street, he was in better shape than he was because of the praying he was doing over his food.
That's amazing. That's amazing. See,
So
we have such a power with our mind and with our energy and with our intuition. And it's just learning how to tap into that. And we can do it on anything. It doesn't just have to be our food. I pray. I even like set an intention over my car when I drive, the gas that I put in my car, everything, and it takes a few seconds. That's all it takes. But it's sending that conscious intention into the field, into the quantum field.
right. And when the thing we have to think about with the food that we eat, everything being energy and vibration, well, food has karma attached to it. Mm-hmm. And so you think about, animal, what did the animal go through? That karma, that energy gets embedded in the flesh, and well, plants have feelings too. Correct. Well, that's one reason why fruitarian has the least amount of karma, because I don't damage anything. I take what is given to me. I take what is freely harvested. Mm-hmm. So I don't damage any plants in this type lifestyle of eating. So then it's got a higher vibrational energy signature just because of that fact.
Absolutely. Because, you think right before they slaughter the cow, you got to think, what are the emotions that those cows are feeling or sensing before that happens? And then that emotion gets trapped energetically within the meat. And, and then you are ingesting that. So you are going to be ingesting the fear, the pain, the suffering, of that animal. But if you set the intention over that food to bless that animal, to thank it, for providing you with that food source, if you are one who is eating the meat, then you will raise the frequency, not only of that food, but also of the animal on the other side.
Right. And I also try to make, but for me, it's for every hand that has touched this piece of fruit, for every hand that made it possible. So from the growers to the pickers, to the drivers, to the producers, to every hand that touched this piece of fruit, please bless them. Thank you. I'm grateful for every hand.
I love that. I think that's excellent. And another concept that I like to do is called eating for the chakras. So our energetic chakras are all based off of color frequencies. And so, if I'm having, say I'm having a difficult monthly cycle, I understand that that's my sacral chakra. So then I start incorporating more orange, colors, because that's the color of the sacral. And so I'll eat peaches and mangoes and nectarines, things that are more orange to help alleviate, some of the pain in those areas. So I've been doing that for years. I have been really trying to incorporate more color into my diet and bringing those in, because then it also will energetically balance, me through my chakra system. And that's been very helpful for me. Have you ever done that before? Or do you practice that at all?
Definitely. Oh, there's something to be said about eating the rainbow, not just Skittles. I'm talking about eating Mother Nature's rainbow. Yeah.
That's awesome. I love that. Eat the rainbow. Well, Michelle, this was a really enlightening conversation. I had a lot of fun, talking about all of this. And is there anything else that you want to add? Is there anything else that maybe we haven't touched on that, pertains to this topic?
To everyone who might although I imagine most people that are going to watch this broadcast probably already understand, but if I was to reach out to everyone, it's just be kind to yourself, listen to yourself. If you went into the grocery store, just shop the outside. Don't shop in the aisles. The real food is on the outside.
Yes.
Nothing on the aisles. If it's on a shelf that can sit in a pantry for a year and year and year, probably not something you want. And the other thing, if you can't pronounce it, you probably shouldn't be eating it and putting it in your body.
I agree. And if you can get out to local farms and meet the farmers in your area, I love where we live here in Washington, where we can go up to Green Bluff and every month we can pick fruit and vegetables. And I'm actually going to head out there this week to get my fair share of blackberries and grapes and, things that I love this time of year. And I wish I could do this year round, because I think it's just amazing to be able to, you have a more appreciation of your food when you pick it yourself. I really feel that. And it just, it just raises the vibration of the food. It raises your vibration because you're out there picking it, and it gives you more appreciation for the people who planted it, and the farmers who put in all their time to create, that food. And so, yeah, if you can get out there to local farms or farmers markets, meet your farmers, that is, a huge thing that you can do to better your nutrition and have a deeper understanding of how do they, what are their farming practices? Do they spray their food? Do they, is it GMO? It just gives you a better idea of where that food is coming from.
Yeah, we are so blessed to have Green Bluff. I'm going Thursday to go pick peaches. So
good. Oh, peaches too. I forgot about those. Yes, I'm so excited. And it's going to be a hot week, so we need to get out there early.
Most definitely.
Well, thank you, Michelle. I know that you make beautiful jewelry, and what's a way that someone can contact you if they have some questions around, being a fruitarian, or they want to reach out and learn more, or they want to buy some of your jewelry? How can they contact you?
Best way would be Facebook.
Okay.
Michelle Earthhawk K. I have a Earthhawk's design page within my own page. I have a business card and I have a website, but I can't remember it off the top of my head. So Facebook is probably the fastest way to find me.
I hear you. I do a lot through Facebook and Instagram too. So I will put all your information below for the viewers and the listeners, so that way if they want to reach out to you, they can contact you. But thank you so much for coming on, Michelle. I really appreciate it. And thank you for celebrating my 100th episode with me today. And I hope that this information was of value to all of you listeners and watchers out there. And, and I hope that a takeaway is, don't beat yourself up. We're all going through this awakening process together. And yes, give yourself a big fat self hug and, tell yourself everything is okay. It's okay that I'm eating this right now. And it's okay, that tomorrow I may eat a little bit healthier, but, just take it one step at a time and just really live in the now moment, because that's where we're at. And I know for me, it's like I'm fasting today, but tomorrow may be a different story. So, and I'm sure Michelle can kind of vouch for that, is that we go through these energetic changes and we shift, with that. So thank you so much, Michelle, for coming on the show today.